When the Vermont legislature passed the Global Warming Solutions Act in 2020, we at the Ethan Allen Institute warned you that this was just a scheme to foist a carbon tax on us all surreptitiously through the back door, their previous attempts through the front door being disastrous failures. Well, here's some of the discussion of a subcommittee of the Climate Council, the body created by the Global Warming Solutions Act to set and recommend policy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Watch this clash of rhetoric versus reality as it plays out over about 45 minutes of debate.
Catherine, I have a final point, which, for the benefit of the committee, about something that's not on this list, and that is a carbon tax or something like that. We quite clearly are not proposing that. We're proposing performance standards to improve the quality of buildings and to encourage heat switching by customers at their choice. And we're not following the tack of thinking that if we just were to impose higher energy costs, that the magic of the market would deliver these solutions.
Yeah. Thank you for noting that, Rich. I think that's a really important comment.
So you got that? The Climate Council is definitely not recommending a carbon tax. Good news, right? Wait for it.
And just by way of sort of broader context, well, I agree with you, Rich. I think there will likely be, these are somewhat devoid of, most of them are devoid of funding sources for these activities.
Right.
And so there will likely be a discussion about how these things are funded as part of the Climate Council process.
Yeah,
that is likely to produce another round of discussion around a carbon tax.
Yeah, Peter, I totally agree with that. And I think that our approach, I don't know what the council will say, but our approach has been to say, sure, we're going to need revenue sources in order to run and deliver these programs.
So they're not recommending a carbon tax as a policy in and of itself, but only as a funding source to pay for other projects. I'm not sure that makes much of a difference to the taxpayer, but there's more.
You're talking about carbon pricing. A well-structured progressive carbon price could do that. It is not necessarily on the table, but again, it could be structured well to serve the outcomes that we need and be a revenue source. I think it's hard not to put these ideas on the table and not have a conversation about, how you're going to pay for that.
So yes, we're going to need a carbon tax as a revenue source. But maybe we shouldn't take it off the table as a policy in and of itself, because if structured properly, it could help us reach our goals.
One of the big options on the table has been for some time now, Transportation Climate Initiative. And I didn't hear you focusing particularly on that. Do you?
In the list. It's in the list. The list that got cut out of the list that went to you all. It's now on the list that's before us, and maybe.
Okay. So just to refresh your memory, the Transportation Climate Initiative, or TCI, is essentially a regional carbon tax on motor fuels, gasoline and diesel. And TCI, which would cost Vermont drivers tens of millions to nearly $100 million a year annually, has never been off the table for the Climate Council. It's a tricky semantic game they're playing here, but as you'll see, they want and intend to get your money.
We should do TCI, recognize that it is inefficient or imperfect and insufficient in and of itself, but it is a funding source, and we should drive those revenues. Massachusetts policy sets 70% of those revenues to go to marginalized, more low-income BIPOC communities. We are recommending something similar.
We can't avoid talking about it. It's a considerable amount of work has been done, and we want it to be on the table.
I guess I would also add that a lot of the recommendations do require funding. And so either TCI or something else, realistically needs to be part of our policy package.
We couldn't agree more. I mean, that's why we have a placeholder here for, including TCI, but likely not limited to. But
including TCI, but likely not limited to. So in this very short span of time, we went from the council patting itself on the back for not proposing a carbon tax to admitting it will need a carbon tax to fund its proposals, and not just a state-based carbon tax, but in addition to a regional carbon tax that would be TCI. This is your money, folks. These meetings are open to public input. If you have an opinion, make it known.